Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Yesterday was devastating across the southeast with the tornado outbreak. And in fact, there were up to 45 tornado reports so far, and the National Weather Service is still doing surveys, and up to 244 wind reports. It was a rapidly developing day into the morning hours, and those just intensified and did not let up into the afternoon hours. And unfortunately, my thoughts and prayers are out there for everybody that got affected by these storms. And there were, in fact, some fatalities, unfortunately. But man, they definitely packed a punch in that area. So let's take a look at the overall setup for the West Coast, because we're still talking about relentless atmospheric river events. We have yet another one that's hitting the coastline this morning, but then another one, even a stronger one, trails behind that one heading into Saturday. And then I think we have one more still to come that's going to be coming down the pike on Monday with a very heavy rainfall and flooding rains in that area. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. And it's also important to hit the like button as well. It definitely helps out more than you know. So let's take a look at the overall setup for the nation in North America and take a look at some of these temperatures, because they are going to be a little bit significant. You can see they're pretty much enjoying the weather down there in Mexico with all those warmer temperatures. But for the middle of the country where the US is, yeah, it's been fairly mild technically, but all the cold air is well up into Canada, and it's plenty cold up there. Siberia was in fact 80 below zero, and you can see widespread 20s and 30 below zero temperatures, and some of that colder air will kind of ooze down by the middle of the week and take advantage of this trough coming in, and that will set the stage what I believe is going to be unfolding of a major snowstorm that's going to be taking place. So here's the rainfall totals over the next 48 hours. So we have that trough that's still dipping down from that severe weather. That's going to bring some instability, some heavier rains into portions of New York City, along the coast here into Boston and the Connecticut and to Massachusetts, and headed into Maine. Most of this will be in the form of snow the further north you get. But wow, look at those totals. I mean, this is just really impressive what California has been through for the last 16 days, and they still got several more systems to come. And so those definitely are concerning. Flooding rains are going to be impacting those areas all the way from northern California. Will definitely sneak all the way down into central and southern California as well. So definitely be on high alert for more heavy rains impacting your area. And then the snow is going to be prevalent as well, with feet of snow impacting those mountain regions and into the higher elevations. Just had insane amounts. We do have some snow showers along the Appalachian Trail, and most of the snow that is left is trapped well to the north up here into the White Mountains region. So, but look at the winds. That's definitely concerning, with, yes, more heavy rain coming to come back into this area. The winds are going to be significant. You've seen this time and time again, where it's going to be knocking down some of those trees and knocking out some power outages in these areas. So the soil is completely saturated. So that's the last thing they actually need technically, is more rain, but they are going to be getting it. But the good thing is, it is definitely helping out and filling up those reservoirs in a big way. And they've come up with significant amounts in the last 3 weeks. But the difference with one of these troughs is it is going to be able to sneak a little bit further into the central US, and it's going to be digging down all the way down into the Baja. So that is significant, because what I showed you, those temperatures up in Canada, that's going to allow some of this, the further this is able to dig, the more colder air gets trapped into this region. So, and it's going to be able to tap into some of that Pacific moisture and have a little bit more lift associated with it out ahead of it. And another warm sector, we're still warm, we still got the Pacific flow off the west. We are going to be taking advantage of a little bit of that colder air. Here's some temperatures on Wednesday morning up here in Canada, below zero. So it's definitely filtering in some of that colder air from northern Canada and putting it down in a little bit southern Canada and reaching it down into the central US and across the northern plains. And you can see it's freezing up there in Kansas City and portions of Colorado, but it's nothing but freezing down there in Texas. You're talking 60s as morning low temperatures, as again, you're going to be in the warm sector down here in Louisiana, and that's going to spell trouble with more heavier rains and probably some severe storms. So the good thing is, this will probably break the 30-day, rainless totals that they've had in Dallas, because they really haven't seen a drop in 30 days. So you're going to have to wait 5 more days, but I do feel that's going to break with at least some showers and storms heading into Wednesday morning. It's also going to be taking advantage of in Oklahoma City, but it's all snow where the temperatures are cold enough to snow up here in eastern Colorado back into Kansas, with that freezing line pulling a little bit further south. But down there in the southeast, yes, you continue to remain in the warm sector, and you've got that significant trough diving in with that shear at the lower levels. That's going to cause that rotation in the atmosphere, and it's almost like deja vu again. This is the last thing you need. We had tornado outbreak from the 2nd to the 4th. We had the one yesterday, and this looks to be another setup that potentially comes in on Wednesday night, for a lot of the same areas: Louisiana into Mississippi, into Alabama, back into Georgia, through the Tennessee Valley, back into Kentucky again. You're still going to be in the warm sector. You got plenty warm, you got the Pacific flow, and that's perfect combination, unfortunately, with cold air pressing from the north. You're going to be looking at for severe storms, even though it is January. In fact, we've seen 111 tornado reports the first 2 weeks of January. That is unheard of, because considering for the entire month, you typically average about 36 tornadoes. So we're already 3 times above the normal averages, and we're only 2 weeks into the month. And we've got more severe weather potentially on the table, even going into next week. So that is definitely concerning with all that, warmer air we've been dealing with. But we are going to be tracking a little bit colder air. So again, the further that trough digs, it's going to be dragging down a little bit of that colder air, and it's all going to be falling in the form of snow up there in Kansas. That'll be sneaking into Nebraska. You see the darker blues. That's always an indication of the very heavy snowfall that's going to be taking place up there in Iowa, probably far northern portions of Illinois here, but then sneaking into portions of Wisconsin. And then it's just all heavy rains, drenching rains into the southeast, and some of those could be severe as we extend and head into Thursday. That severe threat just extends into portions of Georgia now, again, the Atlanta area, back into South Carolina, into North Carolina. Heavier rains break out, and then heavy snows as the low continues to deepen down to a 990 millibar low pressure. Heavier snows really fly into portions of Wisconsin heading into Thursday, and it's just kind of a mixed bag. Again, you're going to be in the warm sector. You got the southwest winds, and by the time it reaches the mid-Atlantic, it's just all rain, and then there's nothing on the backside as far as the snow goes. But yes, definitely concerned about this heavier snows that are going to be breaking out. Here's the kind of the glancing view of the overall ensemble guidance of the European models, and you can see each one of them has a different location where the snow is, but more predominantly it puts it across the northern plains here, across portions of Nebraska, getting into portions of South Dakota, getting into Iowa, and eventually heading into Minnesota and to Wisconsin. About 40% of the members are on board with that snowstorm. And then as we head into Saturday, so again, that trough's going to continue to dig. It continues to drag down slowly some of that colder air. It's not going to be all at once. It's going to be a slow transition to a little bit colder. So heading into next weekend, we could be looking at some, colder conditions, but also a lot of instability, and then probably heavier rains setting up across the southeast. But that snow line could trend a little bit further south. So it actually could creep. This is the Ensemble guidance of the latest GFS. And yeah, we even could be sneaking in some of that snow showers into portions of Oklahoma, and even maybe the far Texas panhandle, creeping into portions of Indiana as well as Ohio. But I think some heavier rains just break out on the southern flank with those warmer conditions. In fact, the latest Climate Prediction Center does in fact have those heavy rains breaking out from the 20th to the 24th time frame across the southeast here through the Tennessee Valley. So definitely concerned about very heavy rain, and some of those could be severe. And then the heavy snow with the trough coming in, the colder air dragging down there from Canada. Heavy snows will break out in eastern portions of Washington, into Oregon, back into Idaho, getting into Montana, over here in Wyoming, through Utah, and going back out into the Rockies. That'll be the 21st time frame going into the 22nd and the 23rd time frame with those heavy snowfall totals piling up. So looking at the overall ensemble guidance of the GFS, again, it's a slow transition to colder, right? We've been predominantly warm for the first 3 weeks of essentially January. But we are going to be seeing a little bit of a transition to some colder temperatures filtering in as this trough really starts to take over. The difference is this ridge builds out west, the taps shut off in California. So after Tuesday, I think you start drying up and get a little bit colder. So the cold transition with the heavier snows flying the Intermountain West, you have the cooler conditions start to filter in with the rain showers down here in the southeast. By the time we get into the 27th of the month, then the colder air really starts to take over. So again, it's a slow process, but eventually I think by the end of the month, much of the lower 48 will predominantly be below average. Because you've been asking, like, where's winter? Where'd it go? I'm like, well, it's been a January thaw for about 3 weeks, but winter does come back with much colder conditions, especially across a widespread region towards the 27th time frame. But it's also going to bring that snow line down too, right? So we got ample amount of moisture in place. It could bring the snows further down into Oklahoma. We could even be talking about some snow showers into portions of Texas now, and getting into Oklahoma, going into Missouri, filtering further south into Illinois, into Indiana, through the Ohio Valley, even Kentucky into Tennessee could start getting into the action, and even portions of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast where you've been high and dry, even the snow up there. I think you'll finally start getting to the action. Some snows are going to be breaking out. And again, the deeper we get into January, I think it drops that snow line further south. So maybe by the time the 29th, I know this is getting to be a long ways out, but this is the climate forecasting system. It does a decent job. You can't really take it verbatim, but the GFS ensembles and the CFS global site is actually implying the same thing around the same time frame. So two long range models are hinting at colder conditions and the snow line dropping further south into Oklahoma and getting into portions of Texas by the time we get into the 25th time frame. And again, if we just take it a step further than that, as we get deeper into January, say around the 29th time frame, again, this is the climate forecasting system, actually talks about some southern snow reaching into portions of Texas. So again, it's a step down process, but I do feel like we're going to get a little bit colder the deeper we get into January, and especially by the end of January. Much of you are going to be feeling like winter. A lot of you are going to be seeing some snow that you haven't seen so far this season. So here's the overall EPS guidance of the European models of all of them. I showed you the different ensemble guidance, but this is kind of a summary of all of them right here. Puts the snow line primarily up into Kansas and Nebraska, through Iowa, portions of Wisconsin. That's your heavier band, and lighter amounts the further south you go. So can't be rolling out Texas Panhandle, getting into portions of Illinois, and then heavier amounts as you extend further north into the Northeast. And then there's your rain. So we're going to have those significant systems across the Southeast, like I showed you, some very heavy rains. The rains are relentless for the West Coast until about Tuesday. So this is all the rain accumulated between now and Tuesday across the West Coast. And then as we get into Wednesday of next week, then I think by the midsection of the country where you have been more or less bone dry, you're going to get some breaks and allow some precipitation with that trough sneaking in as the taps dry up in California. It's going to be able to share some of that precipitation that it hasn't really done in the last 3 weeks because it's just been raining so much across the West Coast. But now places in the central U.S. are finally going to get into the action, and the heavier rains across the Southeast. And then there's the snow for the next 10 days. So I snowed you what goes beyond that, but this picks up the snowstorm that's going to be taking place next week across the upper Midwest and through the north central plains areas with that heavier snow. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do you like this video? Definitely hit me up on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I update those on those platforms as well. And catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.